This blows, Jeremy muttered with a scowl, drawing several glares from the people around him. He didn't see what they were getting mad at him for, though. It wasn't his fault they wasted their money coming to this charlatan show. Everyone knew magic was fake. Smoke and mirrors, wires, misdirection, that's all it ever was. He looked up at the performer, a woman calling herself the extraordinary Espella as she prepared her next trick. She was pretty sexy, he had to admit, clad in a leotard designed to resemble a black and white tuxedo with a matching top hat, her long legs clad in shiny nylons from her hips down to her high-heeled feet. A large colorful box was wheeled out, a hole for the volunteer's head to fit out of at the top while the rest was hidden from view. Jeremy scowled, recognizing this as that lame stabbing swords in the box routine. "Oh come on," he finally yelled at the stage. "Everyone knows this trick." SHH, several audience members hissed at him as Espella growled under her breath. This was the third time that Jeremy had yelled out the trick behind her magic, and he had finally gotten on her last nerve. She had worked too hard to have her show ruined by some know-it-all jerk. Composing herself, she turned and gave the sweetest smile possible. "Well then, sir," she spoke in a deceptively calm voice. "If you feel that way, why not come on up here?" Jeremy blinked as it seemed that every pair of eyes in the theater was turned to him. He gulped, before he smirked and stood up. "Fine. I will. Give him a big hand, folks." Espella laughed as the audience clapped their approval, Jeremy making his way on stage. Once there and at her side, she turned to him. "Now then, honey, what's your name?" "Jeremy," he answered, arms folded. "Welcome to the show, Jeremy," the magician said with a smile. "Now then, seeing as you're so unconvinced, I think you can be my assistant for tonight. Give you some first-hand experience of magic." Jeremy scowled. "What? No way, I'm not Dash. What do you think, ladies and gentlemen?" Espella cut him off, and the entire theater erupted in applause. The young man gulped, realizing he was stuck. Fine then, he finally relented. "What do I have to do?" "Well, right now," she smirked, gesturing to the box that had prompted his outburst. "All you need to do is step inside here." Jeremy rolled his eyes as the magician opened the front of the box. Following her instructions, he stepped into the box before she closed it, slipping a padlock to ensure it remained in place. "How does it feel?" Espella asked, smiling from ear to ear. Jeremy grunted, only his head poking out the top of the box. "Tight," he grumbled, pulling his head in different directions to try and get comfortable as Espella laughed, along with the crowd. "Perfect," the prestidigitator proclaimed. "Now on to the show." A wicked smirk came over her face as she gripped the front face of the box and yanked it off, the bright colors peeling away to reveal a simple white canvas. "As great as it is to finally have an assistant, I'm afraid our volunteer doesn't really look the part, does he?" She giggled devilishly. "Wait, what?" Jeremy asked, craning his neck round as much as his prison would let him. "Let's fix that," she giggled, and with a brief flick of her wrist a typical black and white magician's wand appeared in her gloved hand. She plucked one of the white tips off, revealing a marker underneath. She moved forward, blocking the front of the box from view with her body as she ran the wand along the front, black lines being left in its wake on the white surface. "What the hell are you doing?" Jeremy hissed. "Why don't you tell me?" she asked with a smirk. "After all, everyone knows this trick, right?" Jeremy grumbled in frustration as she finally stepped back, revealing her work with a flourish. "Tada!" The audience went quiet for a second, before erupting in laughter. Jeremy glanced around, confused, until he caught sight of a mirror angled just enough for him to see his front, and his face went red in anger. Drawn on the white front of the box was the curvy body of a Playboy bunny. A voluptuous hourglass figure was etched out, the doodle clad in a simple white leotard and high heels, with little shading lines on her legs to indicate pantyhose. A pair of shirt cuffs and a collar complete with bow tie finished off the drawing. And of course, it was drawn in such a way that Jeremy's head replaced the bunny's. "Oh, very funny," he yelled angrily, making the crowd laugh more. "Should have guessed this was just another lousy trick." "Oh, don't be so quick to judge." Espella smirked, before she slammed her fist on the top of the box beside his head. As if on cue, the box folded apart, unveiling Jeremy for all to see. The crowd's laughter was replaced with odd gasps. Jeremy paused, looked down and let out a scream. What was once well-built was now slender. Where there once were angles were curves. Where there once was a simple t-shirt and jeans, there was now a leotard and pantyhose. "What the hell have you done to me?" he screamed, his now manicured nails cupping his impressive chest. His hands rapidly traveled over his body, feeling his new svelte figure in a desperate attempt to find some indication it wasn't real. But alas, it was, his very real breasts, his very real curves, and the very real emptiness between his legs. "Oh, I almost forgot," Espella said, grabbing a small bucket full of a red substance from offstage. Before Jeremy could react, the liquid was tossed over his head, causing him to let out a yelp as it splashed over his head and shoulders. He growled and reached up, pushing a lock of red hair from his face as. "Wait. Red hair?" He grabbed the lock and pulled it into view, letting out another horrified yell. His short brown hair had been replaced with long red tresses that extended past his shoulders. He reached up and his hands found their way to two objects extending from the top of his new hairdo, no doubt the ears designed to match his new outfit. He growled and grabbed a handful of the red mane, and with a firm yank, let out a cry of pain as it pulled on his scalp. Almost as if it was his real hair. "What do you think, ladies and gentlemen?" Espella asked, awakening him from his thoughts as the crowd began to applaud and cheer at his transformation. He growled, wanting to stomp over, wanting to demand to be changed back. But instead found himself extending one arm with a flourish, the other resting on his now wide hip. "Ta-da!" Espella laughed as the audience cheered, Jeremy's body no longer moving to his will. "A lovely assistant for tonight." The new assistant cringed as his hand raised to his face, his lips kissing his fingertips and blowing it to the audience, before he turned and walked across the stage to the box. His body walked with a definite strut, hips pumping from side to side, stilettos clacking on the stage as if he had worn them all his life. He gripped the box and pushed it off stage, like a good assistant before he returned to Espella's side. "Change me back," he hissed through clenched teeth, but it was drowned out by the applause of the audience. Espella chuckled and waved her hand, calming the crowd. "Now then, ladies and gents, for my next trick I require another volunteer," she explained, then glanced at Jeremy and smirked. "And don't worry, you won't get a makeover like my assistant here." The joke got a few laughs from the audience at the new bunny's expense. He felt his face burn as he turned to the magician. "Hey! Are you listening to me? How about you there?" She ignored him once again, gesturing with her wand to a young man about Jeremy's age. "What's your name?" "Harry," the man called back. "Come on stage, Harry," she grinned, the man being quick to make his way there. She turned to her assistant with a smirk. "Jeremy, go welcome our guest." Jeremy groaned but his body obeyed, sauntering over to the steps to help Harry up. And before he could stop himself, he felt his face lean forward and give the other male a peck on the cheek. "Whoa." Harry blinked, before letting out a chuckle. "Well now, that's a nice welcome." Jeremy's face went as red as his hair, as he led Harry over to Espella. He was forced to adopt the same one hand on hip other gesturing dramatically pose from earlier as Espella explained the trick. He sighed, having no choice but to accept his fate and hope that Espella would let him go back to normal once the show was over. This was going to be a long night.